It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Steffi Haynes. And today we're going to talk about some of the comments Dana White has been making during media rounds this week. We're going to look at Justin Gaethje talking about getting equity rewards from the UFC. We're going to talk about Ilia Topuria and reports of demands that he wanted $20 million to fight Islam Makhachev. We're going to look at Demetrius Johnson's comments about the perils of losing a championship fight. We're going to look at the new AI ranking system this week and the feud between Dana White and Eddie Hearn. There is so much content packed into today's episode, but if you want access to all of it, you're going to need to pony up a little bit of cash for it, because all of our episodes are divided in two pieces. We cut them right down the middle in half, and the first half is free, but the second half is behind a paywall. So if you want access, you got to subscribe with your money. Now, John, how the heck are you?
Oh, great. I'm having a weird sound from not the phone computer I'm talking with you, but my workstation for some keeps beeping, keeps doing little pongs. So I don't know what that, but now it stopped. So we're all good. I'm doing good. I'm missing the Twins game. My mom's in the other room watching the Twins. My girlfriend went to the doctor today and her insurance sucks. So I'm out a lot of money. Let's just put it that way. So things are great. Things are great over at the Nash household.
Well, I hope everything works out, and I hope the Twins win for your sake and your mother's sake, because I love your mom.
Yeah, I'm shocked. They're actually winning lately. They've won 6 or 7 in the last 8. I can't remember. 6 of the last 7, 7 of the last 8. No longer can I really make fun of them like I did before. They're actually turned it around, so that's something.
I'm a Yankees fan, so you know what? Don't care about the Twins. But Lewis Hamilton races this weekend, so I'm looking forward to that. He won the last race, so I'm super stoked right now.
You be stoked for that. I'm also a Dodger fan, as you know, being in LA most of the time. So I got that to
But I love the Dodgers too, though. I can't help myself. I really like the Dodgers.
That's good. I like the Dodgers because we're bullies. We just spend more than everybody else and beat them up. Too bad, losers. Can't handle it.
See, y'all learn from the Yankees. That's what we do.
Exactly. I got to admit, used to complain about the Yankees all the time, but it's nice when you just can outspend everybody else. It's
That's right. And you have Ohtani. I mean, come on. The man he's the prince of baseball right now.
Oh, he's amazing. He's a superhero come to life in baseball.
Yes,
it's crazy.
Indeed. All right, so we do need to get down to business because we had a very packed show to talk about. And as OGs already know, our listeners already know, there's a question that I start every single episode with. So you ready, John? I'm going to surprise you.
No, you're going to surprise me. Throw me the curveball.
Are there any new updates or filings in the UFC antitrust cases?
Yeah. Actually, this week there is. There's a bunch. There's a bunch of stuff that was filed. I mean, it's not a bunch in the sense that it's going to take up the whole show, like it's that much material. But it's a bunch of stuff that was filed in the show. So here we go. Let's start going through all this stuff because we got three different cases that I guess we're going to call the UFC antitrust case. Each have a different filing going on right now. So the first one we have is this is the Endeavor's response. These are the filings. This is Johnson v. Zuffa. And this is the defendant's response to the package to the plaintiffs. Remember they had that whole thing we read last time about the spoliation, all their statements about all the different ways the UFC has just, lost material and how absurd it is. This is their response to it. And so the main filing, the main response, Endeavor, in this case, they argue that there's executives, Ari Emanuel, Patrick Whitesell, Mark Shapiro, that this is what they claim now. Everybody out there, just going to have to make up your own opinion. You're just, make up your mind what you believe what they're saying or not. I'm not going to tell you what to believe, but they said they've never used Signal for UFC related business, that Signal was only on their devices for personal non-UFC purposes, that the Concilio forensic review confirmed this, and that the plaintiff's own named fighters used Signal prolifically while producing none of those messages. Endeavor also argues that it cannot be held responsible for any Zuffa TKO spoliation because the Endeavor UFC agency relationship question is a jury issue under Nevada law. And so this document is hard to, of all their stuff, this document is heavily redacted. This is a throwback to the old days. So whole stuff would be just crossed out. So this one was heavily redacted. And so the actual substance of their internal investigations, when you try to look through them, is almost entirely blacked out. So that's that one. So then they also endeavored and filed a motion to seal, just a procedural motion, explaining why portions of the document that we just discussed and as exhibits, and there's a lot of exhibits, I believe there are 8 or something, are all filed under seal. So all of them are supposedly confidential business information. And so then Zuffa TKO, one of the other defendants in the suit, they did the same as above, but for Zuffa TKO opposition filings, and it's 32 exhibits that were sealed, right? And then in addition to that, this is where it gets kind of interesting. They filed 3 third-party agent declarations. And these declarations were from Jason House of Iridium Sports Agency, Malky Kawa of First Round Management, and Dan Lambert of American Top Team. So if you're a fan of MMA, you're familiar with the UFC, all those names are probably recognizable. All of them are probably, towards the top. They are. If you're going to top the top handful of MMA managers, trainers, I shouldn't say, well, yeah, Dan Lambert's technically also a trainer, but all the main managers, agents in MMA, it's those guys. Each of them has a declaration that says the same thing under penalty of perjury, that one, the UFC contract negotiations were conducted with either Shelby, Maynard, or Campbell, never with Dana White, post 2016 or 2018, depending on the person. And 2, they never use ephemeral messaging apps to communicate with the UFC about business. So that's their declarations. And I know you saw those earlier. Mm-hmm. And we'll probably revisit that after I go through the review of everything here for this case. But then there also was a declaration from Holpuch, I can't remember how to pronounce it, but the declaration is from the Holo Discovery forensic technician, explaining that the 2 things the plaintiffs, if you remember, we discussed this last week, that the plaintiffs had apparently flagged as suspicious that the iPhone 11 showed a password screen when powered on April 2nd, 2026, not the typical Hello Factory reset screen, meaning it had not been wiped. And 2 of the older phones showed Holo in their device names after his inspection. So he explains in an automatic iTunes sync behavior, that's what causes that, because they synced up. It took the name of the Holo, and that was not deliberate renaming. I'm just going to, of all the things I'll say an opinion on, that sounds very reasonable to me. Mm-hmm. So that's for the first case. Do you want to go over that one before we go over the other 2 cases, or do you want me to summarize them first? Okay, because I know you have something to say.
No, I want you to do this one first.
Okay, so we finished this one. Do you have questions then about this one?
No, I'm going to wait until you describe everything. Let me just get to that. Go ahead and do this right now.
Okay, let's go to the other case. Now, The second case they did was the Misha Serkinov v. Zuffa, right, which is one of the 3 antitrust cases. Okay. And that one is that for the Serkinov v. Zuffa, this was a minute order issued today, just right before the show, from Magistrate Judge Brenda Wexler. And the order is just a routine order. So this is not that important, but it applies to the Ninth Circuit good cause standard under Kamakana. That's a previous case that's at precedent. And it finds it satisfactory because the materials contain sensitive business information, employer, vendor information, stuff like that. And so basically what they're granting is a motion to seal for Serkinov. So we are probably not going to get a lot of the details from Serkinov that we're maybe hoping for. that's just to be completist. I included that. That's not the most important thing, I guess I could say. But now we have a third case tying into previously, and this third filing is related to the Johnson v. Zuffa case. It's a spin-off case of this, and this is what we've talked before as well. This is the first round management portion of it, the Johnson v. first round management. And so in this case, what the plaintiffs want is the fighter contracts between first round management, Mulkey Cowa's Miami-based sports agency. For those unaware, the plaintiffs want the fighter contracts between first round management and from their clients and their MMA promoters, documents about UFC contract enforcement, sponsor deals, UFC competitive comparison, fighter compensation records, basically all that stuff covering from around 2015 to present. And so first round management has some objections to that. They claim, now before they wanted the whole thing thrown out, didn't want to have to comply at all. It's been moved from Miami, Florida, where it was first filed, to Nevada now in front of Judge Boulware, but they still have objections, and the objections of first round management is the requests are overboard and burdensome for their small company, which only has like 3 to 5 persons. It has no in-house legal or IT department. So the first round management agents, according to them, use personal phones for everything, meaning any forensic extraction, because that's what they need as an expert to come in and extract the data from the phones, would sweep up generally irrelevant, I should say, personal data. So that's their claim, that they're worried like stuff like health apps, family text, banking notifications, stuff like that would come along with any other material that they're trying to gather from the phones. And so unlike Dominance MMA, that's the other one that we have an identical subpoena and case going on in Nevada over. First round management also represents football, basketball, and college athletes. So they're claiming too that the non-MMA business information exposure problem is even a bigger concern for them. So they also argue that most of what the plaintiffs want is available directly from the UFC parties. The fighters themselves are sponsors, making it's unnecessary to get this material from them. Then they talk about the cost shifting. There's a fight over that. The court ordered in the Dominance case that the plaintiffs pay a cost above $10,000. First round management wants the same treatment here, including full payment for what they're calling the linear manual review, which they claim insists is necessary before any production. In other words, they have to go through manually to see what is relevant to the case and is for their other clients should be taken out. And the plaintiffs have said they're willing to pay collection costs, but have hedged on it, covering the full linear review, calling it unnecessary if search terms are properly crafted. Because remember, if you do these search terms for it, you can pick the names, any data that says UFC, that says a certain fighter's name, things like that. So they say we shouldn't have to pay for a full linear review if you can just do this. And so the case was transferred, as I said, from Florida to Nevada earlier this year, and that's what they're at impasse. And so we are waiting for the judge's opinion request on that motion on that case. So we have these 3 things going on right now, all tied together, and we will have to see what comes out of it. But that's our update on the UFC antitrust case currently.
All right. A question occurred to me that I'm sure other people are wondering as well. Why do the plaintiffs not subpoena the fighter phones? Now, I know the answers to this already, but I'm sure people out there are waiting for you to explain why fighters aren't being subpoenaed for their phones.
Well, that's their clients. That's the plaintiffs right there. So they can ask them to, but they're not in conflict with the right now the plaintiffs' attorneys represent the fighters. The fighters should freely hand it over.
First round management said, you should go back and ask the fighters for their phones. So that's why I'm asking this question, because I figure somebody out there is probably asking it as well.
Well, I mean, why they're asking is that there's communications that they can't get from the fighters. And the truth is I am sure they've asked numerous fighters to please give us any information you have about the case. And some of them probably have. Some of them probably handed over their information. to the attorneys. Many of them probably don't have it anymore or were not involved. But the reason they want to speak to management is in many ways they want to see if there's negotiations going on that we don't have from the fighters that have supplied negotiations. And when you talk about, take it or leave it type situations, they would, because those management deal with numerous fighters, right? You probably have a much more material from them. And also, again, possibly material that was not, that the fighters are not aware of themselves, because that's their job. They're the management. They're supposed to represent and negotiate this stuff. So if anybody's going to have evidence of the negotiations going on between the UFC and the fighters, it would be the management that's doing it, you'd imagine. Or no negotiation, because they have no power to negotiate. The thing I find interesting in this is, and we'll have to wait and see the results, if we move along. But it's interesting that these managers make these statements that there's no material worthwhile, that there's done no negotiations with the UFC, with Dana White, I should say. And so it's basically confirming what Dana White said in testimony. But none of them have complied with the subpoena requests, where they would have the material to confirm what those management are saying in these declarations. And so I find that somewhat interesting, that you're making a statement, but how can we confirm that statement is accurate? Because we have not seen we haven't seen your text messages or emails or only your electronic communications that would confirm the statements anyways. And so, it's hard. I guess the argument for the judge they're trying to make is it's unnecessary for us to comply with discovery. Just believe us that we have not involved Dana White. Now, I also just note, this doesn't mean it's true, but there is a video someone sent me of Malki Kawa in 2000. I can't remember when it was exactly, but after 2018, after the date that they said they stopped negotiating with Dana White, where he talks about how we're going to have to go talk to Dana White and have to get this figured out, something along those lines. I'm just paraphrasing, but it's the implication in it is that Dana White is involved in the negotiation for the deal. That doesn't mean Dana White was. I mean, sometimes, to be fair, just like fans, sometimes people use the term Dana White to represent the UFC. Like, I can't believe Dana White did that, when it's really just the UFC did that, someone else at the UFC.
But it's management, and so I don't believe that. When it's a manager saying that, as opposed to a fighter saying it, see, I'd be more inclined to follow that train of thought if it was a fighter saying it. But when management says it, I believe they mean Dana White.
I generally do, but I also believe it's a way to look like a big shot as a manager. So that's the part I could buy.
But you're talking about the biggest managers in the game, though. And so I once again, I feel like when they say, I have to talk to Dana White, they mean it. You're talking first round management, Iridium Management, and Dominance MMA. Those are the three biggest managers. Even though Malki and his brother say that they are only managing a handful of MMA fighters, they're managing NFL and Major League Baseball and NBA stars. So I feel like they are already in that elevated position, and they don't need to say, oh, I'm going to Dana White. I feel like when they say that, they mean it.
Well, I will say there's a long history of Dana White and the Fertittas refusing to talk to Malki Kawa and first round management. And remember, they used to, in the past, to negotiate on behalf of John Jones, they would get Wayne Harriman to go negotiate on their behalf. I'm curious what Wayne Harriman's up to. Now, people not familiar with Wayne Harriman, he's an old friend of Dana White's and the Fertittas. Also a former member of the Buffalo Mob, served time in prison, probably a confidential informant that turned on everybody on a coke smuggling operation, was later arrested for potentially running a drug operation with the Hells Angels. Colorful character, and I don't know if he's still involved in those types of negotiations on behalf of First Round if they don't deal directly with Dana White, but that'd be interesting as well to know for sure. And the only way you would know if you actually had access to their communications, if the reason perhaps Kawa does not negotiate with Dana White is because Dana White still refuses to negotiate with him, and he uses an intermediary to do it for him. Well, that would still imply Dana White is involved in negotiations. Doesn't mean he is, doesn't mean he's not. But I'm just saying that there's so much to there's so many details left to explore there that you would think, that at this, you would like to get some of the messages that they have going back and forth to see what the actual communications is. It would either confirm what they're saying or prove that it's false. But that's where we are in the case on that front.
With going back to first round management, remember the time that elapsed, that 3 years or 2 years where John Jones was holding out before signing this last deal, this 8-fight deal, and his move to heavyweight and all of that. He came back and he fought, who was it first? It was Cyril Gane first, and then Stipe after that. If you recall, during that time when he wasn't signing, he was representing himself. He had split off from Malky. I am wondering if the UFC found it so difficult to deal with John during that period that when he went back to first round, if they started speaking again. Because Dana said on multiple occasions that it was impossible working with John Jones, and that John wanted this and it was out of the question and blah blah blah. And I'm just wondering if maybe those fences were mended when John went back to first round and magically a deal was made.
Yeah, I'd have to look back and remember and refresh my memory, because I remember he left Malky and got Richard Schaefer to be his special advisor.
And then he stopped with Richard Schaefer and was like hanging in limbo for that period.
Yeah, because Richard Schaefer, the part John Jones didn't investigate when he got Richard Schaefer. He got Richard Schaefer because he's a boxing guy. He'll go take it to Dana White. But he didn't. He should have just done a little investigation, just a little Google search. Mm-hmm. He'd realize that Richard Schaefer was good buddies with Dana White at that time, and they'd been negotiating, discussing, working together, and probably were at the time discussing Zuffa boxing even, because Zuffa boxing, as people recall, was being worked on from 2017 up to the pandemic when they put it on pause. So I'm not sure he picked the best guy that did not have a conflict of interest to represent him when dealing with Dana White.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is that didn't all three of those big shot managers, Jason House, Ali Abdelaziz, and Malky Kawa, didn't they all say, all three of them, that we never do business with Dana White? Well,
that's we just mentioned that's the declarations for the three. No, it's Jason House, Lambert, and Malky Kawa, the three that have declarations here. I don't recall in the previous statements. In fact, I don't think Dominance has issued a statement on that at all in this case. Okay. But their Dominance is one of the ones being, that they're asking for their material and they're fighting it so they don't have to do it. And so I do want to point one interesting fact about Dominance. This has nothing really to do with the case, but if you remember, when Dominance ridiculed the settlement, they're on with Kevin Iola, Abdelaziz. Gosh, man, I'm confusing all my managers in my head right now. I'm going through too many in my head. Abdelaziz, he was on with Kevin Iola, and he ridiculed the whole settlement, how it was a waste of time. They didn't get anything done. They didn't accomplish anything. The contracts had gotten worse, right? And he made this big thing about how poorly they'd done. Now, a few months later, the judge withheld the settlement. They came back, renegotiated, got a bigger settlement just for the league class. Injunctive relief is still ongoing. But if he was so adamant, so worked up over the injunctive relief part, you would think he'd be more helpful to the plaintiffs in this case, because that's the key thing. We need to win injunctive relief for his fighters. If that's what he's arguing for, that we need better contracts. And on top of that, I mean, is he telling his fighters not to sign the terrible provisions in it that exempt them from that force them to have a class action waiver so they can't take part in a class action? Has he been, advising his fighters not to sign that? I'm not certain at all, but it is worth noting that he made a big fuss about how when it looked like the case was, perhaps the outcome was not as good as everybody wanted, he was quick to ridicule it, that it didn't accomplish anything, made things worse. And then back when it's back on the table, there's potentially some injunctive relief. I have not heard him come out and say, well, let's make sure you give you guys all the information you need so you can get the best opportunity to get these contracts rewritten and get my clients as much money as possible. Unless I missed it. I could have possibly missed that. Maybe Abdelaziz has said that somewhere. Ali Abdelaziz has said it somewhere, and I missed it. I'm just got to be fair. It's possible he said that, but I might have missed it.
All right. So we will keep everybody updated of the comings and goings in this case, as always. Now we're going to move on. We do have a little bit more White House content to unpack because Dana's been making media rounds. He did appear at the post-fight presser for this past weekend's Apex card. So first things first, viewer numbers for the White House event have been a big point of contention, with Dana White commenting that, and I quote, 1/3 of Paramount subscribers tuned in. Now, that's not the case. 21.5% of Paramount subscribers are what tuned in. Is Dana just bad at math, or did that feel like an intentional misrepresentation?
Well, I think he's actually accurate in some ways, I believe, if I did my math right on what he's talking about. But he's playing a kind of a semantics game and not telling the full story. What he's talking about, I believe, is he's talking about the viewers. If we add up the total U.S. viewership, because at some point he said it was close to half, didn't he? No. In one of the interviews or something.
Oh, did he? The one I saw, he said it was 1/3.
Oh, because if you add up in the U.S., there are 30-some million subscribers, right? And if you add up the total number, the cumulative number of viewers, which is the part that seems to be throwing off a lot of people, this is what was interesting when they used those Nielsen ratings. They didn't use the peak number when they released it. They released the cumulative number, which is just people that tuned in for a minute or more.
So, at least 1 minute. Yeah. Yeah, at least one.
A minute or more. And so you don't know how many people in the beginning, middle, and end. So the average viewership during the event was, I think, 8 million in the U.S. Cumulative was 15 million. So who knows where it is below. But I think what he's talking about is there's two possibilities. I do remember him, and maybe it was somewhere else, he said they got half or almost half. I think what he's talking about is just the U.S., the number of U.S. subscribers to Paramount, which is 30-some million. I can't remember the exact number. Well, half of that is about 15 million, right, cumulative. Or he's talking about where it's the average, the peak, the actual peak that they didn't release. And that probably comes up to specifically, if you want to be more specific or whatever, exactly 1/3 of the total amount of the Paramount American U.S. audience subscribers. And that's, you could boast that's probably a pretty good number compared to most subscription models. But I do think I'm going to say that's probably a very good number overall, but it's not super surprising for a couple of reasons. One is on Paramount, a lot of people have now subscribed. Several million people have subscribed to Paramount, probably specifically to get UFC content on top of Yellowstone and all the other shit, right? So those people are going to tune in. We know they're going to tune in at some point. And then in addition, there was probably heavy promotion for people that have the Paramount apps. If you're watching something else, you're like, well, I'm going to check this out really quick, or just leave it on and then go to it on accident or whatever. That's several million more people or several 100,000 more people. And then on top of that, it was the big event. So if you're curious about it and you have the Paramount app, you might tune in for briefly. All that adding up to gives you that number, which ends up being either 1/2 or 1/3 based on however you want to calculate it. But that's, again, only the U.S. subscription. I think that's what they're talking about, because that's the only way it makes sense numbers-wise, that he's talking about the U.S. number of U.S. subscribers. Because if you go internationally, it's like over 70 million. I think they're approaching 80 million. And then they get nowhere close to that. So they did this before, again, as I talked about, when they did when they released the Nielsen's rating, and they used cumulative, which no one else uses when they release their numbers. So they've done several things to, I guess, make the numbers look better. And they probably shouldn't be embarrassed. I mean, they're on Paramount, doesn't have a ton of subscribers. The more interesting thing was to release data. How many new subscribers they actually brought in would be very interesting. We haven't heard that yet. But it all looks bad for the most part is because they brought up absurd numbers before. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that makes it look absolutely freaking insane, is because you guys said for a while that you were going to get Super Bowl numbers, 200 million for Joe Rogan, $1 billion for Marco Rubio. I mean, numbers that are absolutely absurd. That's the only reason in some ways that we're laughing at this, because you brought up astronomical numbers. But, Dana White, again, is on a technicality, he's probably right, but you would like him to be clear what number he's talking about.
All right. I'll accept that. I will accept that. Let's talk about Justin Gaethje, who was, the headliner of the UFC White House event. He ended up unifying his interim belt and, got the undisputed lightweight belt off of Ilia Topuria. He thinks that he deserves to be rewarded with equity for everything he's done for the UFC. And he said the following, and I quote, "I'm in a place where I feel like I deserve to be compensated for what I've done, not for what I'm going to do. The UFC should create a company and give me equity in that company so I can build passive income." What do you say to that?
Keep dreaming, Justin. Keep dreaming. That's a dream big, boy. Dream big. I mean, it's obvious they're not going to do it. I don't know what he's asking for. And I saw a lot of people come in with theories why the UFC can't or why they wouldn't. And the theory is, it impacts the antitrust case. It has no impact on the antitrust case. They do it or not. It wouldn't. Yeah, there's just no. First of all, discovery ended for the case. The current case, as of now, they might extend it, but it ended of December 31st of last year. So there's, if they give them equity, it wouldn't even be used for the materials that they're going to build some models on or their case on. It doesn't change anything about the market power, monopoly power argument of the UFC. So that has nothing. I heard other people say, it's, if they do that, then they're no longer independent contractors, they're employees. But I mean, based on what I know, and I've actually looked into it a bit on other subjects, is owning stock in a company you do business with has no bearing on employment classification, because there are plenty of people out there who own stock in companies. They're either independent contractors that work for them, or are even, they're even customers, or they're employees. So, and none of that changes their employee status or anything like that. So it's IRS and the labor boards. They look at behavior control, financial control, about the pay, the nature of the relationship, not passive equity of ownership. So that would have no impact on it. And so, then other people said, they don't want to release information. If he's a shareholder, they got to give him information. They're a public company. People already get the SEC filings. They're not going to give him anything special. It's not like he's going to have such a large share of the company that he gets to go into the boardroom and get, information that no one else does. So the simple fact, they just don't want to. They don't want to set a precedent. They're not going to, because they don't have to. So they're not going to. And if I'm him, I mean, I don't understand his need to demand equity, because the thing is, I guess the thing is, he wants equity because I'm guessing he doesn't want to come and fight anymore, right? Is that your guess? That's my read? Mm-hmm. Is he's hoping to retire? That's not going to work probably. So, he wants equity. So they're not going to give it. There's just, the discussion ends there because they do not want to. Possibly, again, we have a theory floating out there. Me and you've discussed a theory that there might be some balloon payment bonus structure if Conor McGregor finishes contract. Probably not, but there might be. Him, I could see, because the value, especially at the time he came back to the UFC. But Gaethje's not getting shit.
Now, speaking of Justin Gaethje, GSP said that he thinks Justin should retire now, go out on top. Do you agree with that sentiment, or do you think that he needs to squeeze out some more fights while he's champion to get big money?
Well, it's kind of, that was a great, great jump to that question, because we just talked about retirement. Is that, should he retire? I mean, technically he should. He's got a lot of wear and tear, a lot of miles, right? He's been knocked out several times. The guy, his fighting style is not one that's going to be good for his long-term health. And I don't want to, talk about fighters, mental state or whatever, but it does seem to me, that you can see that he has something of a slur compared to what he had before when he speaks, right? Am I crazy for thinking that? I don't think so. And so that would suggest that you'd want to preserve as much of your brain as possible and get out. Now, the flip side of this, though, is this might be the time, if you want vast amount of money, this might be the time to ask for it. The largest contract he can possibly get, much larger than what he ever got before. The UFC, as we know, is notorious for not, putting up huge amounts of money. But I would wait and see. Let's see what happens with the Conor McGregor fight. Because if Conor McGregor, well, either way it works out, but especially if Conor McGregor wins, that sets up a massive fight. Now, on the UFC side, there's no benefit in many ways of paying above the rate they've set for either Conor or Justin, because they have guaranteed revenue. So all it does is it lowers, whatever earnings guidance they have for next year by paying these guys more. But it's something that still can draw such tremendous ratings. It can perhaps build up the valuation of the company when they get to their next negotiation, make Paramount happy, increase their sponsorship ability, all these other spillover effects, second order effects beyond the fact that they get big ratings because they have guaranteed revenue and they're not doing pay-per-views. So the UFC might, they might look at this and we could have just a massive fight next year if Conor McGregor wins against Justin Gaethje. The one guy's a sexual criminal who's been convicted in a civil case about rape, and the other guy hangs out with warlords. The perfect fight to sell to the American public, but it would be a massive fight. I mean, Gaethje in some ways has elevated himself to a position he's never been before because of that performance, right? And holding the title. So that would be a huge fight. And you can imagine him asking for at least what Ilia Topuria got, an 8-figure, $10 million plus contract. They seem to they had. I don't think Ilia's getting that anymore. And I don't.
To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Ooh! Okay, the face!